Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And let's face it, one of the ways that people are going to be successful is when other people know what they're doing. We need people to know what the heck it is that we're doing, especially if we are a leader. And so we're going to have a great time talking with my guest today. So please join me in welcoming Dominic Forth to our program. Welcome, Dominic. How are you today?
Deb, I'm great. It's so great to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
I love it. I love it. Well, you aren't from the U.S. We can tell that just a little bit by your accent. But you are here now. You've been here for quite a long time. But, let me tell folks just a smidge more about you. So Dominic Forth is the CEO of Thought Leaders America and a former journalist with BBC, makes sense, right? NBC, ABC, Fox, and CBS. I think you hit them all. After a near-fatal rafting accident on the Zambezi River, he developed the Calm, Clarity, Courage framework and now helps leaders turn their stories into trust, visibility, and real-world impact. Oh my gosh, Dominic, we're going to have so much fun. So welcome to our program.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's fascinating because I'm very fortunate in a way. And, the Zambezi River story was so profound on me. And I feel very lucky still to be here. But then even luckier just to have conversations like this and work with the leaders I get to work with on a daily basis.
I love it. Well, you have had quite the background. And so tell us just a little bit more about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I spent, without aging myself too much, more than 2 decades in newsrooms and media organizations like the BBC you mentioned. Many happy memories being in Colorado, with KUSA and the NBC. A lot of time with Fox, which was great as a huge sports fan. I was in San Francisco with KTVU, and that was right when the Giants kept winning World Series on even years. But the key thing is, I've learned most of all is how many business owners actually misunderstand media. Mm-hmm. You'd be amazed. And so a lot of business owners think it's about getting attention, but the real value is trust. And that's something that I've really brought forward with my work today, and would love to dig deeper into that concept today because I see that attention is very cheap, but trust is priceless, and you have to protect it at all costs.
Right. And we definitely see that, especially with what's going on in the world. We're not going to talk politics or anything like that, but every morning I listen to WSB Radio here in Atlanta. I like them. I think they provide unbiased coverage. And just this morning, they were talking about the fact that for a variety of reasons, people have no trust in the media. And, and I think that's probably something that has been happening through the years. And I think a big part of that is due to social media and things like that. But it is still a place where we need to be to get our message out there.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating time where we are. There's a great book by Neil Strauss called The Fourth Turning. And The Fourth Turning talks about how society goes through 4 generations. And as part of that fourth turning, a lot of institutions that were held as sacred in many ways become under attack. And mainstream media is one of those institutions that is under attack. And some of this has been done intentionally, and some of it has been done accidentally as well through poor leadership in some cases and stewardship. What's fascinating about the current climate, though, is the rise of AI, because for a while there was a shift from really credible news sources to user-generated content, social media, Reddit. AI pulls a lot from Reddit, but you're now seeing a shift back towards the power of earned media because that's where it's pulling sources from. And I still believe that there's always a place for strong journalism, and we always do really need quality journalism
Right.
to help us.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because what they also talked about this morning was the decline in students going to journalism school or getting communication degrees, things like that. And things come and they go. But now I am going to date myself. I remember Walter Cronkite, right? And what and Dan Rather. I mean, there were a couple back then, right, that you knew you could trust whatever they said. And they were such fabulous reporters. They were the main news anchors for the main stations. And I grew up with just 3 television channels. Um, and so that was where we got our news. But, we trusted them. And I think a big part of what has happened now is the speed in which things happen. When I started in the world of public relations, you had time to review your source, to double check things. You certainly had time to make sure that what you were talking about was correct. And unfortunately now, because of Reddit, because of social, because of all of those things, I think a lot of times we've lost that. Media outlets are having to go with stories a little faster than they would like.
Yeah, and there's so many forces in place because newsrooms were really decimated during COVID,
Right.
and like many industries were,
Mm-hmm.
and yet other industries rebounded, but newsrooms really didn't replace the staff.
Right.
And we're at such a critical juncture because now we have AI where people are questioning what's even real, and there's never been a greater need for journalism because look at social media, everyone has an opinion. I think I grew up in Northern England where I think we're to the pub where you'd have all different people with different opinions, and you knew that some people were always going to be far-fetched with their opinion, and you knew like some people were more serious and more credible. And what's happened is social media's kind of become this level playing field where every person's opinion is often presented either as fact or presented as equal. And that's the power of journalism because let's say someone says it's raining outside. I don't know if you've heard this analogy before, but so one person saying it's raining, one person saying it's not raining. It's not the journalist's job to say, well, he says it's raining, he says it's not. The journalist's job is to go outside
Yeah.
and
Is it raining?
is it raining? And report back. And so we've never had a greater need. And it's sad in a way that it's been under attack. And it's sad that enrollment is down. But there are elements for hope. And I think back to the Minnesota scandal, unfortunately, where, the story about the daycares that were exposed, but that was by an independent journalist.
Right.
So there is hope, and distribution has never been easier to access when anybody can start a YouTube channel these days and anyone can start reporting. It's just sad that, to your point, universities aren't training because you do need specific training to be able to ultimately identify what is true and what is opinion.
Right. And that does cause challenges. I was going to say issues, but challenges is a better word. When we as business people, want to get our message out there, is it appropriate for CNN? Is it appropriate for, the person down the block with their YouTube channel? All of the non-traditional media. And so okay, let me take a step back. First, what is a thought leader and why do we want to get their information out there?
Yeah, so it's again, and I keep using the word fascinating because we're almost in a golden age of thought leadership, I feel like, where there's so much access. And I think people should be empowered to share their opinion. There's so many experts with so many stories that aren't told. And so a thought leader, for the most simplest, in my opinion, definition, is just somebody that has an opinion that they want to share and is leading other people to see things that maybe they didn't see in a certain way through a new lens before. And it's amazing just how much opportunity is out there, but with that becomes great responsibility.
Right. Yeah. But I love that you mentioned opportunity because one of the things that I think people need to think about is what is the best venue? We've been kind of talking about it a little bit. When I started in public relations, it was over 30 years ago, and we didn't have a lot of outlets. Now I was in Denver, so it is a major media outlet. But was it, a story, that we were pitching that was appropriate for major media, or did was it more appropriate for the little, county newspaper? And now, of course, is it appropriate for, somebody's YouTube channel, which gives so much more opportunity. And I think sometimes people think, well, we want on CNN when, it's more appropriate for them to get on something that is very targeted.
I agree. It's so funny because there's people that come to us and almost demand that they want to be on Good Morning America or
Mhm.
Today Show. And sometimes they ask the question like, oh, this is the first time I'm meeting them sometimes. I'm like, that's great. So what other media experience do you have? And they're like, well, no, I've not been on TV before.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you have to align what the need is. And I'm a big believer in local programming. Local TV has amazing loyalty with viewers,
Right.
especially in the mornings.
Mm-hmm.
And I often, once I can show them and say, if I can get you on 3 local TV stations in the morning with a very loyal viewership,
Mm-hmm.
and I can do it within the next 3 weeks, that's going to move the needle far more than
Mm-hmm.
hoping in 12 months' time that you go viral and get
Mm-hmm.
picked up on,
Right.
Good Morning America or
Mm-hmm.
another show of that caliber. So to your point, it's very nuanced, and often as PR professionals, we're guides. We're guiding people on the message because the message is the most important piece,
Right.
and then the platform to distribute that message
Mm-hmm.
on.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it is part of a plan. I mean, that's the other thing that sometimes people forget, because you have to also be thinking, what do you want from this? I had a client one time who was an author. She wrote this wonderful book, and she came to me and she said, I want you to promote this book, and I want you to get media coverage. Like you just mentioned, she had never done anything at all. I mean, but she told me, I want you to get me on Oprah. And I said, okay, we got to, and we were in Denver. I said, let's get you on the Denver stations first. And there were, oh gosh, at that point, probably 30 radio stations. I mean, 2 major newspapers, several, 5, I think at that point, TVs, all sorts of things. And I said, let's get you on the local, because you are a local girl. So this is a great story. And build that social proof before we pitch to Oprah. No, I want to go on Oprah. And I said, okay, on the off chance that I get you on Oprah, and this was long enough ago, this was before print on demand through Amazon. So you had to have the physical books, right? I said, do you have 30,000 books that you can fulfill? Because she had self-published. And she, of course, said no. And so, yeah, you have to be thinking about, what is your goal? Why are you wanting to do this? And so many people just think, but I want to be on TV.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why I think it always helps to have a coach. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And having somebody that can help you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, someone who's walked the path is so important.
Right. And so, that you talked about that coach, and it's so important not just to have that plan, but to have the training. And, obviously it's very different if, depending on what you're pitching to, but if you're doing anything in front of a camera, especially, you need media training, and it's not just, well, I've done several Zooms, and,
Yeah.
and media training is very important because, like I said, well,
Yep.
and because we talk like that, and we especially talk like that when we get nervous. So talk to us about why, and media training is actually good for everything, getting up in front of a crowd, all sorts of things. But talk to us about why it's important to have, some training before you ever even think about doing this.
Yeah, it's funny because especially national TV, you have to almost command attention in the first 3 seconds. I mean, people's attention span are so short, and not being able to deliver that clean, crisp sound bite can really hurt you. And it's the opposite of what we're taught. So for a lot of doctors and legal professionals, they are taught to be as factually in depth as possible. But in TV, you just don't have time.
Right.
So you have to talk almost in headlines. And then if asked, then you can have the follow-up detail and detail. And that is a very hard skill. As you can tell with the long answer I'm giving you, it's like, it's really hard. So you have to change your brain in the formats, because what that producer is looking for is that zinger, that soundbite that then can be replayed over and over again, 6 to 8 seconds sometimes. That might be the only clip. And so that's where training becomes so powerful. And then other pieces is commanding, even with tonality. So being very authoritative with the tone of voice that you use. I'm breaking my own rules again, but just coming in with a very like, this is what you need to know. It's just so you can stop the audience in the track. Like, whoa, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. I need to pay attention to him or her.
Right.
And then back it up with substance. But so many people lead with, well, I've done 300 keynotes and look at all my credentials.
Right. I'm going to promote myself.
Yes. Well, and that's another great point. You've got to be audience centric, because audiences are very selfish by nature, which, especially in today's society, people just don't have time. It's nothing personal. They just don't have time. And you're one click away from being flipped to a different station.
Right.
And
I don't care that you have, X number of degrees and you've done this. No, I just want to know, who was it? Said just the facts, ma'am. Yeah, I just want, the information.
Yeah. And a key thing to notice is producers, they don't book people, they book segments.
Yes.
And so many entrepreneurs, they pitch themselves like, well, I'm a founder, author, coach, CEO. Please interview me. Look at all these credentials. But really, what you would want, just to use this example, like a framing for this segment could be the mistake most experts make when pitching themselves. And then here's how the 3 things that you should do. And by the way, here's the expert to talk about it.
Right.
And so then the expert makes it inevitable. And then the producer's like, this is great. This person's done all the work for me. And then you have the guest comes on and they're ready to deliver sound bites, eye contact, posture, very big things, hand movements. On Zoom calls, you got to be very careful, because I like to use my hands a lot. Well, then
I've knocked my microphone over before.
Yeah. Well, and you see these giant hands coming through the screen, and you're like, so it's a great technique that I always recommend is practice in front of the mirror and pay attention to your hands. If your hands look awkward, then they're going to look even more. Everything's amplified on TV.
Right. And videotape yourself.
Yes.
I've always done that. And it's funny because you and I are both in chairs that move, right? And, and it's so funny. I'm deliberately rocking my chair back and forth, but that's one of those things that we do when we're nervous. Now, I like a little bit of movement, right? Because if somebody's a statue, you don't like that. And then one of the other things that used to just drive me nuts, and this is more a male thing than females, is you put your hands in your pockets. Because, you don't want to be waving them, but then you do the key jangle thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, I used to always tell people, get everything out of your pockets. It's okay to put your hands in your pockets. We don't want fig leaf, all of those things. So put your hands in your pockets. But yeah, don't be jangling keys. Don't be spinning in your chair. Just talk natural.
Yeah. And a big thing in studio, in person, and this is a great takeaway for people listening who are doing media interviews, is always mirror the host's body language, especially before the shot gets set up. If they are sat on the edge, and we sort of call it the uncomfortable edge, because you're like so far on the edge of the couch, but on TV it looks, and you're so close together. That's the funny
engaged.
Thing. Yep. I was laughing with a host at ABC7 once because we were both so far on the edge of the couch. I'm like, one of us is going to fall here at some point. Like, thankfully we didn't. But it's little things like that. And that's where a coach helps, because you can't see how you look until after the segment. A good one for gentlemen is sitting on your coattail of your jacket to make sure so that way your shoulders don't fluff up. And then I think for busy patterns, it can cause that moire effect, like zebra stripes sometimes. So you've got to be conscious of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say, ask the producers before two things right before you're about to start the segment.
Mm-hmm.
You ask the host, hey, can I just see what questions you've got just to make sure, just so there's no surprises. And the second one, especially if you've got long hair, is to say, oh, hey, like, is everything okay? Like, how does everything look? Because quite often the producers are focused on the host.
Mm-hmm.
So the host hair looks
Right. And they're
perfect.
preparing and right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly I had it happen, a microphone wire with a client where, the host is all tucked in, but you're a little wire, and 9 out of 10 people don't notice it.
Right.
But when you're the one on TV and you see that wire sticking out, or you see the stray hair, and you're like, why did nobody tell me? So
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. And things like, jewelry, right? Especially, for women. A necklace is fine. Dangly earrings that are going to cause distract. No, just take them out.
yeah.
One of the ones I did one time, and luckily this was not an interview. We were recording, but we were, it was to be used later. And you would think that I would have thought of this. I wore this shirt and it had a stripe, just one stripe. So it wasn't going to be doing the woogity woogity, but it was Kelly green. And so when they put me in front of the green screen, I had a hole in my body, and it was like, oh dear. And luckily somebody there had another shirt and we traded shirts and that was that. But yeah, I mean, if you know you're going to be in front of a green screen, and even on Zoom, right? Don't wear the green of that green screen, or whatever it is going to disappear.
Yep. And two colors that typically don't go together, like navy and black, or blue and black.
Mm-hmm.
I had a client, he had very nice brown shoes, and he's like, which would you wear? Would you wear brown or black? And his suit was kind of more navy than it was blue. And I said, go with the black. And he goes, really? But doesn't that break a fashion rule? I said, here's the deal. You want as many people focused on your face and your message as possible. You don't want any distractions. If you go on set with those shoes, you know what they're going to be looking at.
Right. Well, and we get caught up in that, right? When you're watching an interview, if there's something off, we start watching, I was mentioning speak affectations. When somebody has something, especially if they say, or, something over and over, pretty soon I'm not paying attention to what they're saying. I'm counting. How many times are they going to say that? Which is, and again, I get it. We say things like that when we're nervous, when we're thinking, right? It's okay to just not say anything. Just that pause is okay. And gather your thoughts and go on.
Yeah, it's funny because I've seen people keep scores, where they do a tally if somebody has that keyword or that crutch word. We used to do it with some speaker training where you'd click. So if someone said or the whole room would click. And even to this day, sometimes I'll catch myself and I'm like, I hear the clicking in my mind.
Right, yeah. When I was in college long ago, I did an intensive theater experience. And it was, that was all you did for like a month. This was a private college. And so we did these things and so that it was great. We did all these things, but part of what we really were working on was enunciation and diction and things like that. So they kept score. And it was so funny. And there were like 10 of us who were doing this program. And the director was the one who kept score. And whoever had the most issues had to cook dinner for everybody that night. And I tell you what, you really started paying attention. Now, sometimes we just thought it was great to cook, to be the cook, but you really did start thinking, okay, is the word get or is it get? And, and it's interesting because you and I are both now in the South. And so sometimes words start sounding a little more Southern. And, but yeah, I mean, it's, you really watch those things like that and it's okay. We do them and I like them better than if somebody sounds rehearsed, but just kind of be conscious of those things.
Oh, totally. And when I traveled back to the UK, last summer, my wife was laughing at me because my accent came back so thick.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, very Liverpool. I grew up between Liverpool and Manchester. And so, with Liverpool, it's like, mate, all right there, mate. And she was just laughing because what I had to do in journalism school was we cut out these very small straws and you put them into the back of your mouth. So you can't close your mouth. I don't think I've really shared this publicly before. So you had to put the straw. And what it did was it made you so very small straws, but it maximized the muscles. So it sounded strange, obviously, in the moment, but the goal was to build your muscles of your jaw, and it made our enunciation better because we were using more muscles. Yeah. And so I've forgotten about that. Yeah. Because England's so regionalized as well. With you drive 5 miles up the road and the accent has changed so much. And it actually was a major fork in the road in my career because I was working for a NPR radio station, a music station really in Kansas City. And I was trying to break into a TV and really being an on-air reporter. And I interviewed for a position and great team. It was with Scripps, great company. They have an NBC affiliate in Kansas City. And they broke it to me quite pleasantly, to be honest. They said, we love everything about you, but there's one slight problem. It's going to be very hard with a guy with a Liverpool accent reporting local news in Kansas City.
Especially Kansas City.
Yeah. Like, there's been a crime committed here on, whichever avenue. And they said, we really want you to work with us. Would you be interested in coming to our marketing and sales department? Because we really want you to come work for us. But the piece I was laughing about was the fact, a local Liverpool accent in Kansas City wasn't going to,
right. Unless you're talking about the Beatles, right?
yeah. Which was the perfect fit for the radio station. The radio station was great. And I had a great station manager there, John Hart, who I absolutely love, because what he would do, he's like, Dominic, I've got to break it to you. You can play the Beatles, you can play the Rolling Stones. Here's all the tunes you can play. But I want you to shut up between each song. And he tells this to everybody. I say, am I talking too much? He's like, no, but people are here for the music. So I want you to do 3 things. 1, the name of the last song. Next, the name of the station. And then the name of the next song. And that's it. And so the music just flowed. And the retention was phenomenal. We just kept people all the way through because people weren't there for me. They were there for the music. But he wanted the name of the station said between every song because when the Nielsen diaries came, so that station was 90.9 The Bridge, 90.9 The Bridge. I would hear it in my sleep because we said it so often. Because with the diaries, with the way they used to measure the radio ratings was they would literally send diaries out to people and ask them to write down what they listened to that day.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. And so by ingraining the name of the station over and over and over again, he just wanted that to be the first thing that people would write down. And it worked really well. So I was getting paid not to speak, basically.
Right.
Just play music. Yeah.
But that's a good point for what we're talking about now. To, if you're being interviewed, and I don't care if it's print or whatever, to keep now, you don't want to do it so it's obnoxious or sounds weird. Keep reminding people your company name, right? I love television commercials, and one of my favorite commercials of all time is the commercial of herding cats. I just love that, and I think that's such a great analogy. I do know who it was for, but for the longest time, I could not remember who it was for because they never mentioned the company name. And so we all thought, hey, this is really great, but we have no idea who it's for. So, when you're doing interviews, do you want to keep gently reminding people of your company and things like that?
Yeah, it's something very nuanced. And it's a great question because we've all seen, I don't want to pick on attorneys, but we've all seen attorneys who are like, if you're in a wreck, you need a check.
Call
like,
boogity boogity boogity.
Yeah.
Remember,
and
call boogity boogity boogity.
Yeah. We used to do focus groups where we'd measure the effectiveness of ads. And for that one, the call to action, very effectiveness. But the overall likelihood of people wanting to call or brand association was very low. And so how do you do it in a tactical, nuanced way? And there's a law firm in Chicago that I saw that did it very, very well, where the way it was shot was almost like you were at a cocktail party with the lead attorney and the head of the firm. And he would almost say, hey, if you're in a traffic accident, there might be some things that you don't know. Call an attorney, and as if the way a friend would say, hey, call an attorney. And then the name of the company came up. And you're like, oh, I need to call an attorney. Oh, I like him. I'm going to call him. And so we had double-digit growth with that campaign
Wow.
because it was presented in the right way. It wasn't presented as salesy. It was presented in a helpful, emotionally, connected way.
Right.
And so that's the nuance. And then the other piece, when you're invited on to comment on a certain topic as well, it's almost like you're invited to somebody's house in a way. And so quite often, if you wait for the right moment, they'll often invite you to self-promote. I had it happen on an interview here locally in Tampa Bay, and it was quite funny because I was talking just about public relations, and then she asked about Thought Leaders America, and I hesitated because I didn't want to self-promote.
Right.
The host starts laughing. She's like, "No, this is your opportunity to self-promote. We want you to self-promote."
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, great. Here's what we do." So I think it's that fine line, like you say, guiding people about how you can help them. People naturally perk up and say, "Well, you sound like you're an expert on this. How can we reach out to you, or tell us more?" And then people lean in.
Right.
Yep. And then to your point, Deb, is then be ready to without being salesy, but just self-promote.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And it's interesting because, and I always tell people this, whoever is interviewing you, and I don't, I somehow I got tied into doing podcast interviews with a school in Pakistan. And it's just the cutest thing in the world. And there's to interview non-Pakistani professionals is basically what they're told. And I do, sometimes 2 a week, and because once I interview with one, then they all pounce on me. And it's great fun. They all have different takes. And I had this one young woman who interviewed me, and they are told that because I've talked to the instructors, they have to develop their own questions. And so I was talking with her about having cancer and still being a professional and things like this. And so one of her questions to me was, when you have a serious illness like cancer, are there also mental health issues? I just thought that was the greatest question in the world. And so anyhow, we finished with the interview and I said, "How old are you?" And she giggled. Now I could see her, right? So I knew she was young. And she said, 8. And so my point in that story is, I don't care if it's an 8-year-old who's interviewing you or somebody who is very seasoned at doing all of this. They want the best story. They don't want you to go, I'm going to, or to freak out and say, I can't answer that. The Geraldo Riveras are still out there, but they want a good story, and they want a good interview. So they're not really trying gotchas. They're not, doing all of those. So they want you to be able to gather your thoughts. They want you to be able to give good information, even if they're 8 years old.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. People don't connect with resumes. They connect with earned perspective. And that's what they really want. And it leads back into how we were talking about trust and authenticity.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I tell people, it's okay to say, I don't know. And now what a reporter really wants to hear is, I don't know, but I'll get that information for you. But yeah, it's, and oh gosh, folks, never, ever, 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 ever give wrong information just because you want to fill that space.
Yeah. And always check back with a reporter, because what you've said is not the final comment. We had this happen recently, really on the crisis communication side. We had a company, they've been in business for probably 6 or 7 years, and it was always be one of the, sorry, without sidestepping too quickly, always be conscious of interviews around November sweeps.
Right.
It's a big time for ratings still, and that's where you'll see a lot of consumer reporters go for kind of gotcha stories. And so with this client, they dug up some negative reviews from 2 years prior, some of them. One review had used the service and he didn't get the results that he wanted, and he'd filed a complaint. And they were basing this whole expose on this client. And it was totally unfair and totally unfounded. And so we let the client give their side of the story, but then we stayed in touch with the journalist and said, hey, what other things have come up?
Right.
And we were just open. And like you say, we didn't give it wrong information. We took time to get the facts correct. And the journalist came back and said, you're right. This is just much ado about nothing. And the story erred, but it erred in a completely different direction. And it mentioned there'd been negative reviews, but it also mentioned what they had done in response to this. And it actually came out really positive and really authentic, because it's like, yes, there is some bad reviews. Here's what they're doing. And as a viewer, you're like, this is great. I'm hearing both sides of the story here. And it ended with a positive light. Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned the word authentic. I think that's really big, is, because we are going to do our own research. And so if we find something that they've glossed over or whatever, then you've lost that authenticity. And sometimes the most authentic thing you can say is, we screwed up. Now, I know that the attorneys don't like it, if we, but, and saying I'm sorry is also a great thing to put in there, because you're not saying we screwed up, but you're saying, I'm sorry this happened, and, but it's like you said, we want to know that it's a person who is doing that interview, and it's okay to be saying, this was bad. This was really bad.
Thank you so much for saying that, because we've almost lost the art of apologizing in a way. Especially with media, very deadline driven. And, if someone's late, instead of saying, hey, I'm sorry I'm late, people now say, oh, thank you for your patience. And I get it. Thank you for your patience. It doesn't put the person on defensive, but sometimes you do need to say, I'm sorry, like you said. And again, it's so much more authentic. It's funny, because we work with people on messaging. That's the first thing we do, because if your messaging isn't right, it doesn't matter what platform you're on. And the three things we work on them are, number one, it has to be audience centric. So, what's in it for the viewer, making sure that we used to come up with a character called Joe Sixpack. This guy on the couch, his name's Joe. He likes to drink 6-pack of beer, watch the show. The goal was to make it him perk up and not change the channel. And then to make the story the second level, which is emotionally engaging. So how do you make that messaging go from informational to emotional, where it moves people, where they want to click, in today's world, the share button or the repost or retweet? In the old days, it was make Joe call his wife Martha from the other room and say, hey, Martha.
Come look.
Yeah. But the third piece, which this is missed so many times, is authenticity. And so often we have people who are great spokespeople. It's very informational, it's very entertaining, very emotionally engaging, but there's no authenticity there. Yep.
Right.
And yeah.
And I think some of that is due to advertising and the influencers and things like this. I tell people, I don't think Jennifer Aniston eats that popcorn and buys her hand lotion at the local CVS. But we also have to remember, she is paid to be talking about that. And so that kind of brings me to, what is the difference between earned public relations and advertising?
Yeah. So the simplest way is, for me, public relations is what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's having that positive glow. Think people are saying nice things about you. Advertising is often more attractive to businesses, because you're literally paying for a message to go out. What I love about advertising, it's controlled. You control the messaging, you control the time almost that it can go out. And you can almost measure the response a lot easier. You spend X on campaign, you got Y dollars back, 6-to-1 ROI. It was a good campaign. Oh, we didn't hit the number. So that's where, and this is a great conversation, because that's where things are getting confused in the current landscape, because you have PR being treated as advertising. So people want an immediate ROI. Like I was featured in the Daily Mail, and I haven't seen an ROI yet. Well, that Daily Mail article or Wall Street Journal article or Bloomberg, that compounds over time. So every time someone puts your name in a Google search, or even in AI, let's be honest, AI as well, people are always going to find that. So that's going to compound over time. Advertising, the minute that 30-second commercial runs, it's gone. And you have to keep running it, keep running it. And a lot of clients run into this problem, because spending thousands and thousands of dollars, especially e-commerce brands,
Mm-hmm.
thousands of dollars, and the algorithm changes and all that hard work's gone overnight. Whereas that Wall Street Journal article or that ABC interview,
Mm-hmm.
that's where trust is truly built.
Right.
And they complement each other. This is something else. It's not one is better than the other. They complement each other. And then you've got marketing in between.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing's the other piece of the puzzle.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That is tying them together. And to me, it's also a timing thing. If I send a press release, whoever I send it to, first of all, they can change it, and that's always a fun thing to try to explain to the clients. Now, they're not going to change it, make it incorrect, but they might take out a paragraph or something. But they're also going to run it when they have space and time. An ad, you can say, I want this on X TV station at 5:01 p.m. And if you're paying for that spot, that's when it goes. And timing things can get all messed up. I remember, when I worked for the American Cancer Society, obviously we did special events, right? Big special events. And you always had media partners. That was just how you helped get the messaging out there, all sorts of things. And so we had this big event, and our media partner, our TV station, did not show up. And, I'm in the office the next day, and the fundraising person is yelling at me. Why didn't we have anybody? Nobody showed up. And I said, you understand the Gulf War started yesterday. And it's like, okay, it does come back to that thing that we learned a very long time ago. If it bleeds, it leads. They all, I don't care if it's the 8-year-old or, a big major thing like CNN, they still have limited resources. They could not cover our event because of that. Now, we got a really good story later from them to make up for it. But yeah, and they're people too. I mean, that's the other thing is remember that these folks are people.
Yeah, we had a snowstorm in Kansas City, very similar to this, where there was actually paid programming from a church that they paid for to be featured on Sunday morning. And we had a huge snowstorm. And in the Midwest, the roads get really icy.
Right. Oh yeah, you have ice storms there. Bleh.
I walked in Monday morning and I had all these voicemails. I was on my office phone, and they hadn't called my cell phone, but this guy, the pastor was so upset. And I was really surprised because I said to him in the end, I said, excuse me, I'm sorry to have to bring this up, but aren't you a church where you're actually looking out for people's safety and security? We had to switch to emergency weather, and that's why the broadcast was cancelled. And I'm extremely sorry, but it was literally a snowstorm. And, it kind of showed some true colors in that respect, because there are things with earned media that, and that was paid media even, but because there are acts of God, for want of a better expression, that are out of control. And that's why PR is so valuable, because when you look at, especially the current news cycles, you often can't pay to get on the big net, like CNN, Fox News. You can't pay to get on Fox and Friends. And I've had clients who've been ready to go on, and he was waiting 30 minutes on a Zoom call. And then there was it wasn't an assassination attempt, but, with Trump at the golf course where they found somebody in the perimeter, they switched to that. His segment never got aired.
Right.
Never even, and because you just can't control it. And so I think that's why sometimes PR, for busy CEOs, sometimes it's not the best fit.
Right.
Sometimes maybe it's creating your own YouTube channel on your own terms and creating your own audience. But I will say that when it comes to PR, media gives you so much external validation, that third-party proof.
Right.
And that is so powerful and so priceless, because that's where you have someone like the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, if they're talking positively about you or even featuring you, that gives you so much credibility, way more than any paid ad schedule ever could.
Right. And you mentioned having your own YouTube channel. That's great. That's a great place to put stuff out. But of course, you're going to say nice things about yourself and your company there. You do want the unbiased. That's why you want the as you said, the third party, because they're going to cover you no matter what. But it is important to know the difference between paid advertising, because you do have more control over that.
Yeah, and they're both valuable for different
Right.
reasons. So the biggest shift we're seeing in our business at the moment is there is a race to the bottom with e-commerce brands where they're really struggling with Meta, the owners of Facebook and
Right.
Instagram, because the algorithm keeps changing, the cost per acquisition is going up, and there's a lot of distrust as well because so many like supplement brands, for example, there's so much competition. There's so much AI generated content. People don't know who to trust. And so we're getting flooded with responses at the moment for people saying, hey, how do we get on TV? Because if we can be on TV and have ABC or CBS talking about our product, they're not going to book anybody that's not, especially around medical, they're not going to book anybody that is not legitimate. And so it shows their clients, customers really, this is a company I can trust because the journalists done the homework, the network's done the homework, and now they're being featured. And then that one interview, sometimes I've seen 6 to 12 months being repurposed.
Right. Oh,
And
yeah.
it's some of the most highest engaged content they have.
Right. Right. And like you said, repurposed. You've done an interview. Well, you put it in your blog. You put it on your social. You put it all of those things. Don't make sure you're giving credit and all of those things that you're supposed to do. But yeah, if it's great, then keep using it. And if it's evergreen content, or even if it's not, it's okay to keep it out there.
Yeah, Veterans Day is a great example of that, where I have a book author for the last 3 years. He's used Veterans Day interviews that he did 3 years ago, and he just keeps, because the messaging still reflects today.
Right.
Yeah, and that's for anyone listening. I would challenge the audience to say, what are 3 ideas that you want to be known for? I think if you can start there,
Okay.
it makes it so much easier to then having conversations with producers because that clarity of like, I want to be known for these 3 things. I want to be not just known, I want to be trusted for these 3 things. And you have the authenticity, then for us as coaches and as a booking partner, we can then take that to a producer and really have the segment ready for them
Right.
and then have an expert who is trusted for those 3 topics.
Right. And I love that you say have it ready for them. I mean, you're not scripting it out, you're not doing things, but you've done a lot of the work yourself. And we mentioned it. All of these places are now short-staffed. So the more
Yes.
you can do to help them do their job, you're not telling them how to do their job, you're helping them do it. That's going to be invaluable.
Yeah. Well, and the question is, it's not how can I get more visibility? It's what do I want to be trusted for?
Right.
That's the key because the leaders who win in this next decade, they're not going to be necessarily the ones with the best product, the biggest platform, or even the loudest voice. They'll be the ones that the market trusts.
Right.
And trust is built through clarity, consistency, and courage. And often we miss out the courage part, but
Right.
courage is so important.
Let's talk about courage, because courage comes about when something bad has happened, right? You've had a worker killed. Something bad has happened. And of course, our first instinct is hide, hide. Don't, but the opposite should be really what we're doing. And so talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's really important to one, you have to read the room. I think that's easier said than done. I agree. Hide. I think pausing is okay to take time, but you communicate that, hey, we're putting together a formal statement, and depending, on the incident, you obviously get legal advice, where it's necessary. But communicating with the journalist and reporter to say, hey, we're putting a report together, and then being authentic with what happened, taking accountability, I think is very important. And then staying close to the reporter as well. The one thing you have to be careful of sometimes, I think back to Prince Andrew's interview in the UK where she was so nice to him and he was just like, didn't realize
Smarmy is, I think, my word.
well, he was digging a huge hole for himself, and the reporter just kept, oh yeah, tell me more, and And that's why you always want someone who's been through this before, an ally with experience who, like, for example, with the client I mentioned where there was the gotcha interview and we managed to nullify that. We'd seen it 1,000 times before. And so that's where you ask for help. Yep.
Right.
Because you don't necessarily want to fall on the sword unnecessarily. You want to acknowledge the situation. You definitely want to be empathetic if it's a negative situation. But you don't always have to fall on the sword either.
Right.
Because sometimes the facts aren't all in. We see this a lot, don't we, in social media? There's a lot of public outcry over something where you see a 12-second clip of an incident and then the police will release the minute prior.
And you're like,
oh. Happened in the UK. There was an airport brawl last summer and it looks like the police are beating up these poor passengers from the clip and there's a huge outrage. And then the police released the full clip and the police were getting battered.
Right.
Yeah.
Defending themselves was what was going on.
Yeah, female police officer. I think she had either a nose or jaw broken.
Oh, yikes.
Yep. You always want to get the facts first as well. So I know I'm going down a rabbit hole. Sorry, with crisis
the context
communication.
really is important. I mean, that's the thing is, okay, what got cut? And I tell people, when you're doing an interview, watch but, right? So you ask somebody a question and they say, yes, but yada, yada, yada. Well, they cut out to that first part. And so it actually twists it into the other thing. And so, yes, but we haven't killed anybody recently. And what comes across is, well, we haven't killed anybody recently. So just watch those things.
You've got the CEO with a big sign, like it was 1 day since last death on on site.
Right.
Yeah. I could talk through that though, because you bring up a good point. Like there's, you always want to be authentic. You want to definitely own the situation with crisis communications, but sometimes there isn't a crisis, and yet I see a lot of CEOs still make mistakes, and there's 5 mistakes that I see that CEOs make that kill their authority before they even know it. And so I could walk through those quickly if you like.
Yes, let's do those quickly.
Yep. So the first one, and when we touched on this earlier, is talking about yourself instead of your audience. So what's in it for the audience? Because the authority is the one that grants the audience is what grants the authority. Right. You can't always claim it. And then the other is not having a clear narrative. And so you see this all the time. People they go off to the races, ramble in a way. And so having that predefined, really those 3 things, what are the 3 things I want to be known for? And then weak positioning is another thing we see. So people far too general in a world of specialists. So, knowing what your specialty is, and a great example is, rather than someone saying I'm a marketing consultant that helps business grow revenue, being more specific, hey, I work with B2B SaaS companies. We're reducing customer acquisitions by X amount. Those specifics go a long way. And that ties into their overall media strategy. So, having a coach or someone to support you, knowing what are the right interviews to take and what are the outlets to avoid that aren't worth your time, and then what meets in the middle. And then the biggest one, and this is why I loved our conversation today, is that often people wait until they feel that they're going to be ready. And sometimes waiting, it's just not preparation. It's fear dressed up as diligence.
Right.
And we see this quite often in corporate settings where people, especially female founders, where often they'll have the idea someone else will take credit in the room. And so you're never going to feel ready. I know we've talked about a lot of horror stories today in a way, do's and don'ts, but I always, for everyone listening to this that, wants to step up and do more media interviews, and they feel like, oh my goodness, how can I ever do this now after everything we've talked through? We all feel that way. Right. Would you agree that first interview?
Oh, the first couple of times my knees knocked, I thought I was going to pass out.
Yeah. And then you get through the first interview and you're like, that was amazing. And then you get onto the second and then the 10th and then the 15th.
Right.
Yeah. So they're the 5 things I see that, people often just don't these kind of can make those mistakes. And I think that's why having a coach or a guide really just helps.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Or cheerleader in our
that's
case.
it. You need a cheerleader. Yeah. And it is okay, folks, to say no. I mean, that's the other thing is I think sometimes we think, well, we have to respond. Now, it could just be flat out no. I mean, there could be reasons to just not do it. But in many cases, it's no, not now. As you were saying, that way you can get your ducks in a row, you can be prepared, and then you give a good interview, which is what they want.
Yeah, and that's a great point as well, because everyone wants you to succeed on that interview.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The audience are there to be informed, entertained, or educated. The host wants you to succeed because they want to look good as well.
Right. Yeah, they don't want to look mean or bully or whatever. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's I was asked this question recently. Someone said, well, how do you get over your nerves? And the thing that changed everything for me was I was hesitating about giving, this was a public speech. And someone said to me, like, it's not about you. You've got to think about the audience. Like, they need to hear what you're about to tell them. As if to say, how dare you be so selfish by being nervous? But the minute I thought of that reframe, I'm like, oh, it's not about me. It's not about the messenger. It's about the message. It's about the audience. Think of all the people you can help with your message. Think of all the lives you can transform by telling your story.
Right.
Because so many people don't tell the stories. They say that the most valuable real estate in the world is the graveyards, because that's where all the untold stories
are. Yeah.
Yeah. The unfinished books and the $1 million business ideas.
Right.
So you have to tell your story.
Right. And again, it might only pertain to 5 people or maybe 50,000, but it's okay. If those are the right 5 people or the right 50,000, then, you want your story out there.
Oh, we have clients with YouTube channels with less than 1,000 views, and they're killing it because those people that are tuning in, those 685 subscribers are their ideal audience. And then on the flip side, there's people who've gone viral that are bankrupt or broke because, dancing in the kitchen, or, I'm not picking on, but it's 30 seconds of fame. But to your point, having the right audience, see the right message at the right time.
Right.
That's so powerful.
I love it. Well, oh my gosh, Dominic, we've only got a couple minutes left, and we have to have you on again because I think this is just so important, especially in this day and age with so much non-traditional media and all sorts of things, because we want people to get their message out there. We want them to be thought leaders. But for those who are going, okay, I think I'm ready, and they need to talk to you, how do they find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Yep. So LinkedIn's a great place to connect with me, Dominic Forth, and our company, thoughtleadersamerica.com. We've just launched a new newsletter, authoritybrief.com. We talk about all these topics, how producers get 300 emails a day. How do you get your email to be the one that breaks through? But if you have a quick question, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Dominic Forth.
Cool.
And I'm always happy to help because I'm very passionate about helping people tell the story and helping that story transform other people's lives.
I love it. I love it. And folks, if you're thinking, oh no, I can't do that. Yes, you can. And things like podcasts, right? We didn't even talk about that. Being on a podcast is, it's media also. I can go to something and get press credentials because of what I do. But that's very different than a 30-second spot on television, and so just be thinking about where is the best place to get your message out there.
Yep. And where we can help. So we're fully done for you service. So we'll help you hone in on what your story is and help you realize why it matters and why it needs to be told. From there, we have a huge network of relationships across TV, podcast, traditional media. And we also have very advanced research capabilities. And so, especially for C-suite, where we can survey 1,000 Americans very quickly on your topic, build narrative arcs around it, build storylines, and get you press often in 7 to 10 days. So I'm not trying to self-promote too much, but we do it all. Satellite media tours, you name it.
I love it. I love it. Well, Dominic, like I said, we will have you on again because I think this is so important. And I mean, yes, it is my background, and so I just find it fascinating. But I think it really is something that so many people and organizations don't even consider because they think we're not newsworthy. We don't know what to do. Why would anybody care? Well, people do care.
Yep. Well, and in the age of AI as well, there is so much noise out there.
Mhm.
The way to truly differentiate yourself is by thought leadership
Mhm.
and just sharing what you're passionate about. Those three things that you want to be known and trusted. I really want to emphasize the trusted part because that's the way things are going. Is there's so much content flooding everywhere. Your unique voice, your unique storytelling is what's going to differentiate you in the next 2 to 3 years.
I love it. Well, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Yeah, I think just to really emphasize that the leaders who are going to win in this next decade, it's not going to be the ones with the best product or the biggest platform or even the loudest voice. It's who the market trusts. And so trust is built through clarity, it's built through consistency, and it's built through courage. So my advice to every business owner listening to this, or consultant or expert, is to stop asking, how can I get visibility, and start focusing on what do I want to be trusted for? Because once you can answer that, every interview, post, story, and media opportunity, that then becomes something bigger and it starts to grow your authority, and that authority grows influence, and it becomes a snowball effect from there. So, yeah, trust is key.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun getting to know Dominic Forth, the CEO of Thought Leaders America. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.